hand deliver it to our main office, but only you, and it has to be only at our main office. You cannot drop it off at a poll location. But some people prefer to turn in their ballot as their vote, and you may do that. But once again, only by you and only at the main location, which is our main office. Another important change with Senate Bill 5 is that it amends Chapter 84 in many different ways. It does approach the voting assistant, the fraudulent ways that some of our elderly and disabled are being assisted in a fraudulent manner. So there's a lot to read about that. But another thing that it allows us to do is to question if a voter checks off that they are disabled, because only those that are 65 and older or are disabled may vote by mail. But there are those that check off disabled and nobody comes checking, nobody questions them, and they are able also then to vote through ballot by mail. Well, now Senate Bill 5 does allow this to be questioned or investigated if in fact there is a complaint. So, make sure that people are knowing this so that there are no offenses being created during this time. Keep in mind that voter ID still exists. There are 7 acceptable forms of ID, the original 7. But in September of 2016, the law was amended to now accept alternate voter ID, such as a bank statement, a government document, any document that has a name and an address. Your name, of course, and an address. You are, although, asked to fill out what is called a declaration of impediment. And it will ask you, why were you not able to get one of the 7 voter IDs? And now, the Senate Bill 5 also creates and makes, if you make a false statement on this form, it's a state jail felony. It carries a maximum of 180 days to 2 years jail and a fine of up to $10,000. So this changed now with Senate Bill 5, where the law is still the same. You may declare a declaration of impediment. I lost my ID. I've not had an opportunity to go buy another one. You fill out a declaration of impediment and you get to vote. So it's all on the honor system where you fill that out. Although if someone does turn this in and there is an investigation and a person is found in fact to be guilty, now the penalty has gone up. So we are working right now on creating the schedules, your sample ballots, updating our website. Hopefully, as of tomorrow, we will have been able to obtain all of the election day sites. As you don't know, your parties are the ones that determine your election day sites, and so we're finalizing those right now. And as soon as that happens, we will then be able to supply you and afford you a schedule, sample ballots, and of course, all the information on our website. Don't hesitate to call the office. Don't hesitate to come by if you have a question. Don't find yourself at the poll location with an issue. There's no need. You still have time to take care of any issues before you head out there and cast your ballot. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. And now, one thing I would like to do is recognize all candidates for any office who are here tonight. Would you please stand and let us, you may clap and show our appreciation for these people. And I also would like to show our appreciation to those people who have been candidates but were elected and are elected officials. Would you please stand and let us thank you very much for your service. And now I would like to recognize 2 candidates especially who are not on our form because they are in uncontested races, and we only include contested races. But tonight I would like to recognize Jane Cross and Hilda DeShazo, if you'll come up here, and they are going to tell you in about 1 minute a little bit about why they are running or whatever they will choose to say. All right, Hilda.
Thank you very much.
And the timekeeper is right there.
Yes, but I'm not going to look at it.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Hilda Garza DeChazo, and I'm back. I'm running because protect the taxpayers of District 41 from any attempt to propose legislation or taxation for a healthcare district under any disguise. It's important to me that all the constituents of District 41 know that they have a choice of who represents them and that they have a fighter against unwanted taxation. I'm a lifelong resident of McAllen. I'm a retired educator, having dedicated 33 years to public schools as a teacher, coach, and administrator. I have served on the McAllen ISD Board of Trustees, and I am currently serving on the State Bar of Texas Disciplinary Council and the Hidalgo County Head Start Policy Council. I'm proud of our community and its residents. I look forward to the opportunity to serve with all the residents in the Texas House of Representatives, not just special interest groups and deep pocket donors. I will work hard to improve our state's educational system for our children, for those who teach them, and for those who have retired from the noblest of professions. I will be your citizen legislator. I believe it's time for a citizen legislator in Austin. And I would like to close with this statement. People who don't change their minds don't change anything. I hope you will change your mind and vote for me in November. And I hope that we'll do this, because if you don't, you will change nothing. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and God bless you.
Karaoke. Good evening, everyone, and I'm running for Hidalgo County Judge. And let me tell you, he's always been a friend of mine forever. And Richard, he's coming after me. That's what he's told me. I hope it's sexual harassment. I'm a businesswoman. I have taken my companies from 13 to 4. I know how to trim fat. I know how to take things, and I know when somebody's blowing smoke when it shouldn't be blowing. If it sounds too good to be true, chances are it's too good to be true. So, I'm running as a Republican. You can't get any crazier than a white girl running in Hidalgo County as a Republican. So, I just want you to know that I'm here for lowering taxes. I'm here for no more taxes. And if they tell you, oh, it's a little bit of a tax deduction, it's wrong. So please, be informed, be positive, and take care, and let's try something different for a change. Vote for me in November, because I don't care what happens in March.
Thank you. And now I would like to introduce a very important person, our moderator, Sam Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Director. Okay, thank you all for being here tonight, and let's just get right into it. First, I'm going to introduce our three illustrious panelists. First, we have, starting from stage left to right, Davis Rankin of 710 KURV Radio. Monica Stewart of Futuro FB. And freelance journalist Dave Hendricks. Our timekeeper candidates is Alberto Morales of Act Now, and so let's try to adhere to that. Okay, to get right into it, the first portion of tonight's candidate forum will be the two candidates for district attorney. Our candidates are incumbent Gus Rodriguez and Brent Challenger. We will now begin by each candidate will be able to go ahead and give an intro statement of 1 minute. We will start with the incumbent.
Thank you. Thank you, CodeRGV, and everyone else who's here this evening with us. Again, my name is Ricardo Rodriguez, and I am your district attorney for the past 3 years and I think 23 days, something like that. I practiced for about 5.5 years. I had a general practice, diversified in all areas of the law. During that time, I was also elected as a city commissioner for the beautiful city of Edinburgh. No offense, Commissioner McAllen is here. During the time that I was practicing, I was city commissioner. I stepped down as a city commissioner, and I was elected as your 92nd District Court judge. And I was on the bench for about 6.5 years. Then I stepped down and I ran for district attorney, approximately almost 4 years ago. During the time that I was on the bench, it's a general jurisdiction court, so I practice in all areas of the law as well, and also now 3 years as your district attorney. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody present, including Futuro FB for putting on this forum. It's important for all of us to participate in the electoral process. That's our form of government, governed by the people and for the people. Now, I'm running for DA because I believe that my opponent has failed to carry out his duties as district attorney. Now, I don't do this race lightly. I'm low funded. I'm not asking lawyers to contribute to my campaign, because I believe that once you sell the badge of DA, then that office becomes corruptible. In 33 years as DA, I tried to do what was best for the county, to do openly. I had open doors. I did not close the door to anybody. My political enemies had as much right to walk in as those that were for me. And I tried to do the best with the people that I had in office. They were low funded, and they did the best on our behalf. I promise to do the same again.
Just point of order for those in attendance. Let's hold our applause until the end, so that we can move a little more quickly. The next thing is I will be asking a public question to each candidate. It will be the same question for both candidates, and again, you'll have 1 minute to respond. We will go in ballot order, which, does anybody know what ballot order is? We'll start with Renee Garrett. Question is, what skills, attributes, and experiences have you acquired and public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Well, first of all, being a graduate from Pan American and UT Law School and U.S. Army, Lieutenant, Military Intelligence, and then my practice as a lawyer for so many years, DA for 33 and assistant DA for 1.5 years. I handled everything that you could handle in a county, in a growing county. When I started, it was 180,000 people. I finished with about 1 million. I started with about 14 lawyers, and I ended up with about 63 lawyers. My management skills and my standards that I acquired not only from the military, but from my training and my actual experience in the courtroom. Having tried a capital murder case, tried murder cases, I did not ask somebody else to do some of that when I was low funded and not enough staff. I did grand jury work. I took the cases to court, and I believe that experience far outweighs what my opponent has done in the last 3 years and 23 days. Thank you.
Okay. Same question for Ricardo Rodriguez. What skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired and public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Besides the attributes and experience that I just mentioned a while ago, we have done many things at the district attorney's office in these last 3 years. We have created a crime victims unit that has been recognized in the national, state, and county level. We have strengthened the relationship with law enforcement, where we've been more efficient and effective in prosecuting our cases, which the public has seen in the last 3 years. We've done good in creating alternative sentencing for individuals. We reduced the population in the juvenile health facility, and also we've become very efficient and effective at our office by creating special divisions. For example, special crimes. You know, we had many cases that dealt with sexual assault on children and adults that were being not prosecuted as soon as possible. They were being put in the back burner, and the Special Crimes Division has done great and served justice for many people.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now invite our panelists to begin asking questions, and what we're going to do is we're going to go, each panelist will ask a question, and we'll do 2 rounds of that before we switch it up. So let's go ahead and go ladies first.
Okay.
The question will be first to Renee Guerra, and then and then we'll switch, and then that question will be, so you'll end up on the second time asking a question of the other candidate.
Perfect.
Okay?
What is the most serious problem that you believe the DA's office faces today, and what would you do to solve it?
Well, you know, I ran an office that was wide open to everybody. I believe that the problem that my opponent has encountered the last 3 years is during the last campaign, he made too many campaign promises. I know that he offered jobs to people that were not as experienced as the people that were in office. I know he lacked management skills. Right off the bat, he fired 7 employees that had been there for years. During his tenure of the last 3 years, at 4:45, he walked in through his staff to an office and escorted a lady who had been there for over 25 years and told her, "You're no longer needed here." To me, when you have that kind of management, when you send somebody to an academy and make him an investigator when he hasn't even written a traffic ticket, I believe that those standards were not the standards that we set for 33 years. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go, oh, you can ask a follow-up if you want. You don't have to. You good? All right, so we'll go to Dave, ask Ricardo Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez, when you ran against Mr. Guerra 4 years ago, you and your campaign said that you were concerned about the conviction rate for child sex crimes. About only 1/3 of those cases resulted in convictions, according to your campaign. What have you done to improve the process of prosecuting them, and what is your conviction rate now?
What happens is that when you become complacent and idle, and you've been there for too long, and you stay stuck in that chair, and you don't care about victims, what happens, especially in these cases that are very important, they get put in the back burner, and nobody's paying attention to them. So we created a special crimes division that just concentrates on these type of cases, on cases that unfortunately have to deal with sexual assault on children and adults, and also cases that have to do with the elderly, injury to the elderly, and also to children. So with the special crimes division that we've created, we've been efficient and effective. We've gone together with law enforcement that concentrates only on these type of cases, and we've been able to prosecute much, much better these cases that they were prosecuted for. And it's not the prosecutor's fault. It's the person who was in charge and who was a leader at that time, who sat idle and complacent and wasn't doing enough on these type of cases.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you know what your conviction rate is now?
Our conviction rate is much, much higher than it was before. The documents are there to show at the courthouse. You can go by and see them. Because before, there was many, many cases, and again, this is at the courthouse where one can go and seek the records. There was these type of cases on sexual assault on children and adults. There was cases being dismissed. There was many cases that were put on probation when they should have never put on probation. And why? Because there was no oversight. And this special crimes division, now there's a chief prosecutor who's in charge of this division, and is only in charge of prosecuting these cases and making sure that there's justice for these victims. Instead of closing the doors to the victims, not hearing them out, and not having a crime victims unit in place to be able to give the service that these victims needed for a long time.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Davis, question to Renee Guerra.
Let me give Mr. Guerra a chance to address that. What do you have to say in response to, you said you didn't care about victims, and you stayed in your chair all the time, and Mr. Rodriguez says he's getting a much higher conviction rate in sex crimes.
You know, he can say anything he wants to right now. Nobody has gone out to the courthouse and checked the administration of the judicial records that are sent to Austin every month by the district clerk. I know of a case where you have a child between the ages of 9 and 12 who's abused. And that child goes through investigation and documents and statements and examination, what have you. They go to court in that case, and after the child testifies, because the child is not able to recollect every act that happened to her, the prosecution folds. His aunt, who is the chief prosecutor for that section, Hope Palacios, decides to plead down their case to assault with bodily injury. And the person is let go from a first-degree felony that could send that individual to life imprisonment. And he's let out of jail after so many days. Now, that's not the quality of standards that I set. My deal was, if you testify and you decide to go to a jury, let the jury decide. In that case, they failed that child miserably. I would not gloat about that. Thank you.
All right. Next question will be from Mike Stewart, and that will be for Ricardo Rodriguez.
If re-elected, what can you do today that your opponent could not do when he was in office?
We will continue to strengthen the foundation that we've laid when we're talking about crime victims. We're talking about strengthening the relationship with law enforcement. We're talking about special crimes. We will continue to strengthen the foundation. But we have to make sure that we don't become idle. Again, we don't become comfortable in that position. Because it's easy to become complacent. It's easy just to sit back and not have oversight on what's being done at these offices. That's the prosecution. So that's why we've created chief prosecutors in each division to make sure that there's oversight, to make sure that everyone complies with these responsibilities. And we have to strengthen also, we have to strengthen even more domestic violence. We have to do more with law enforcement in our office, in our crime victims unit, to be able to help individuals with domestic violence and making sure that we're giving them the service that they need.
Thank you. All right. Dave. Dave Hendricks, question to Renee Garrett.
Mr. Garrett, for years, you rejected calls to reinvestigate and prosecute the murder of Irene Garza.
Yes.
Last year, a jury convicted former priest John Fight of her murder. Why didn't you push to take that case to trial?
Well, first of all, when I received that case many years ago, even before, I believe, 2000, it was a pile of about maybe 15, 30 pages. A lot of the investigations that had been done were not written down. And the evidence that was there at that time, I looked at it, I felt that that case would never go to court. Now, the Rangers and the McAllen Police Department would look at this case and would come up, and they would not come up with anything that would be concrete that you could use under the laws of evidence and procedure. Now, when you take that case in the last few days and the last couple of months, if you listen to the case and you listen to the testimony, the ex-priest was convicted on hearsay evidence without the accusers being able to be examined in the courtroom. I personally don't believe that case, if he survives, will be held up on appeal because they violated the confrontation clause day in and day out. The rulings of the court, I believe, were questionable. If you look at the timing when he was arrested, by the time he goes to court, he was in jail for more than 200 days. And I would not gloat about that. I wouldn't say that justice was met out quickly. I did prosecute the case. I presented the case to a grand jury. And a grand jury felt that under the circumstances, the person should not be indicted at that time. But when you have hearsay evidence and rumor and what have you, then the person can be convicted. I think that case will be reversed.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you think justice was served then in that case?
Who's that follow-up from?
It's for Mr.
Garrett. You know, if you take somebody to the court, if he's innocent, and you know he's innocent, that's first an injustice. Okay? In the case of Irene Garza, when my opponent goes on TV after the conviction, after the friendly judge made a lot of friendly rulings, and he says that I had no compassion for Irene Garza. He wasn't with me when I was a 15-year-old student reading all the documents or the papers at McAllen and Edinburgh and looking at the TV when we lost Irene Garza. My family knew family members of Irene Garza who used to buy tamales from my mom. We all cried for Irene Garza because she was our beauty queen that was taken from us. A lot of us believed that there was an arrangement for her killer not to be around, and we felt that there was going to be discrimination in the case. And if you look at it back then, there was discrimination. There was white and brown. And some people did not get justice. Now, Irene Garza didn't get justice in 1960 or 61 or 62. I was not the DA there. I was just the person that convicted the person who I read it in the paper. But my opponent gloats and says that I had no compassion, for victims, children. I mean, that's a downright lie.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Next question from Davis Rankin, and that will be for Ricardo Rodriguez.
Without making this a law school seminar, Mr. Guerra says that he thinks Mr. Fife was convicted on hearsay evidence. Can you talk about what?
My opponent was cheering and hoping that there was no conviction on the Javier Garza case. The best defense attorney, besides the one that were representing John Fife, was my opponent from day one. When he presented this case to the grand jury, he didn't bring everyone to the grand jury. He could have brought both priests to the grand jury to give testimony. But obviously, my opponent made a medical examination of these individuals that they could not testify properly, that they didn't have the right information. He closed the door on law enforcement. He said the law enforcement did a horrible job, that they didn't know what they were doing, that they fed information to the witnesses. From day one, my opponent had the opportunity to do justice and to do his job, to comply with the duties and responsibilities, and he did not. And he can make up any excuse that he wants. This case was presented in a courtroom, was heard by a jury, and there was justice. And my opponent will keep saying and will continue to say that he was right and everybody else was wrong. And that's a shame to the victims, to Irene Garza and to the victims as well.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
The idea of being convicted on hearsay, what about the, what is it that makes you think it's not hearsay and that you'll be upheld on appeal?
We are confident that this case will be upheld on appeal. We're confident that there's exceptions to the hearsay, and there's hearsay that are not hearsays, that one think they're hearsay. The case was presented to a courtroom. The judge made the rulings. There was a conviction on this case, and again, we are confident that there has been justice in this case. He uses an excuse because he didn't want to go do the work. He didn't want to go make sure that, to talk to witnesses. We traveled all over the United States on this case because we knew that there was going to be justice for him. We were going to work hard, and we did what we needed to do to present this case when it should have been presented a long time ago.
Thank you. All right, so now that we're nice and warmed up, we're going to have a little break in the action here, a little change in the action here. So I'll explain it. We're going to do one candidate gets to ask the other candidate a question, the candidate responds, and then vice versa. Remain civilized. And then we will come back and our panel will go through one more round. One more round? Yeah, one more. Anyway, so Mr. Guerra, if you'd like to ask Mr. Rodriguez a question, and then we'll switch it up. And I believe, hold on, before we dive into this, timekeeper, I think it's 3 minutes to respond. So, okay, let's go.
In the last campaign, my opponent said that he was going to show by example. He was going to be in the courtroom and be a leader amongst men and women that fight for law enforcement. How many trials have you had in 3.5 years? 3 years and 23 days.
I have not had a trial as a district attorney in the 3 years and 23 days because we've been busy cleaning up and making sure that there's justice at the DA's office since the last 32 years or 30 plus years that my opponent was there. There was a lot that we've been working on. When we talk about, again, crime victims, we created a crime victims unit that never existed at the DA's office. And this is a service that's very important to our victims. On this crime victims unit that was created, we have gone out to and garnered over $1 million to be able to give this services to the victims. I'll give you a good comparison. El Paso County. El Paso County is about the same size as our county. The DA has been there for 20 plus years. 20 plus years. When we talk about crime victims in El Paso County, there are approximately 20 advocates, 20 victim advocates in place in El Paso County. And he has created this the 20 plus years that he's been there to give that service to our victims. At the DA's office here in Hidalgo County, there was 0 crime victim advocates when I got into office. 0. My opponent had the opportunity to create a crime victims unit, if you compare it to El Paso County, which has existed for a long time as to the crime victims unit, and never did. Again, that's why I keep saying that where was the care for our victims? Where were the services for our victims? When counties like El Paso County and so many other counties have in their office embedded crime victims units and advocates that give the service that is much needed for our victims that need to be guided through the judicial process. In 3 years, we've garnered over $1 million in grants, which also my opponent never garnered any grants to be able to help the taxpayer. We've garnered over $1 million in grants to be able to pay for these crime victim advocates, and they can give the service that is much needed, not only to guide them through the judicial process, but because it's the law to have crime victims advocates, and also to give those crime victims a voice, and also they can have justice as well.
Thank you. Okay, so turning it around, Ricardo Rodriguez, if you have a question for Renee Guerra, and Mr. Guerra, you'll have 3 minutes.
My question to my opponent is, how many cases did he try in the 30 plus years that he's been there, that he was there in the DA's office as a district attorney?
I tried serial rapists of elderly women in the presence of their husbands. I went to Chicago to testify where another conviction over there gave him 124 years in prison. I prosecuted a double homicide of a couple of individuals in Westlaco, where the guy battered them with a fire extinguisher. He got life in prison. I prosecuted a capital murderer who killed Mr. Clarence's champion from Mercedes, who rest in peace, who had earlier robbed the store in Alamo and tried to knife the clerk. That was a death penalty that was received and adjudicated. I went to court in other crimes, and then later on, when the population grew and I had to manage a greater staff, I had to do more management. Now, he says that he has created a $1 million crime victims advocating unit. Well, I had every secretary work on crime victims. When he says that I had no compassion for crime victims, we did not work with crime victims. Every secretary that was in a court had to have an impact statement from victims and to assist the victims in getting money for reimbursement for their medical costs that were part of the Crime Victims Compensation Act. Now, the $1 million that he says that he secured, and I had an earlier grant that was thrown out because there was a typographical error in a reapplication at the governor's office. They kicked us out, and I said, I don't need the governor's office money to advocate for crime victims, so I passed on the duties to every secretary to do crime victims. Now, when he says he's got this fantastic Crime Victims Act advocates, and I don't know how many, like El Paso, well, why does a young lady of 16 years old who gets her jaw broken on 16th Street or 17th Street in McAllen, how come nobody has reached out to her to pay the hospital bills that she had to use, that she accumulated in San Antonio when they were putting her jaw back together again? How does that fall through the DA's office without somebody reaching out? How does a man that whose case was indicted from Alamo, battered by 2 individuals, how come he has not gotten a call from the DA's office to see how he's doing and whether his case is going to court? And that case was indicted under my administration. And I see him every Wednesday when I go to a pachanga in Alamo. And I ask him if does he know what happened to his case? Why? If you have so many staff, and really these are political jobs. These are not advocate jobs. You hire more people, depending on you, you get more, you try to get more votes. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to do, we won't go through the full panel twice, but we'll get 2 more questions for each candidate. And Monica, who are you? Okay, good.
Mr. Guerra, some might say that 33 years in office is enough and it's time to change. How do you address the individuals who say that it's not time for you to change hands?
Okay, 33 years dedicating myself to the county plus the years as an assistant, I felt was enough at one time. But when I started reading the tea leaves about my opponent wanted to run for DA and looking at what he had done as a district judge and the experience that he had and the political family that backs him, okay, they have a great influence at the courthouse. I felt that the several lawyers that are in the family practicing actively were going to be people of special privilege. The people that supported him were going to support him. When he came out and disrobed and came out of the closet, came out as just used to run as a DA, Robert Salinas, who advocated for him. Well, what does he get several months into his administration? He gets a murderer, 4 years in prison, who's already in prison on another crime. And all he shot at this guy 6 times and he wrote it to the paper. He didn't intend to kill him. That's why it was a weak case. All they had was DNA. It's in the paper. Read about it.
Follow up, Dave? Question to Mr. Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez, after you took office, there was an explosion of game rooms that started proliferating, especially in the western part of Hidalgo County. It took about 18 months for the DA's office to kind of stamp out the ones that were operating openly. But since then, there have been all kinds of underground game rooms that have kept popping up and shutting down, and the cycle goes on. What are you doing to crack down on illegal gambling in the county?
Well, obviously, when these gaming rooms were popping up within the cities that were very visible, we did everything we could to work with our office and other law enforcement agencies and making sure that we stopped the illegal gambling or gaming places, venues. So we did a good job of stopping these illegal gambling places with several law enforcement agencies. So now we're doing everything we can to work with the Sheriff's Office and the municipal agencies as well. More are coming out in the rural area. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we do everything to combat them, just like we did before, which we stopped them. So we're going to continue doing what we can to making sure that we protect the individuals who are being taken advantage of these gaming rooms.
Thank you. I misspoke. There was only going to be one more question per candidate, so just because we're kind of up on it with time, what we're going to do is we're going to give each candidate 1 minute to sort of summarize your position, and we'll go and that'll be that. So let's start with Renee.
How much time?
1 minute.
1 minute. Well, you have heard the questions that have been given to us. I know that a lot of you already decided who you're going to vote for. My being here is to bring out the issues, not the glowing facts about my administration and my work as a prosecutor, or to diminish Mr. Rodriguez, but just to bring out to the people to make have them realize that there is a distinct difference in what was there for 33 years versus what has been there for 3 years and 23 days. I threatened the City Commission of La Jolla when they passed an ordinance allowing the game rooms. I threatened to indict them. That's why they didn't vote for me in the last election. They voted for my opponent. They allowed the game rooms in. And then later on, when the heat started coming up, my distinguished opponent decided through the Sheriff's Office, it wasn't his. They went after the game rooms. It wasn't him. He can't take credit for that. But he will. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, 1 minute.
There's documents to show that our office, our great investigators, along with many other law enforcement agencies, were responsible for stopping these gaming activities. Not only did we stop them, we also were able to pick up over $500,000 in one of those investigations. Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of Hidalgo County, you are the judges of what has happened these last 2 years. You are the judges because you are the voters. To compare the 33 years that my opponent was there in office as to the things that we've talked about that we've implemented are very important at the DA's office. You all are the judges to compare and see who has done what and who has not done what. For 57 years, there was individuals who were seeking justice or crying for justice. For 57 years. And for this gentleman to sit up here and say that hearsay and that it was wrong and that it shouldn't have happened, there's no room for arrogance in this office, ladies and gentlemen. Only respect and dignity, and that's what we've done all this time. As a DA, as a judge, as a lawyer, so there's no room for arrogance. There's no room for complacence. And that's what you've seen, ladies and gentlemen, today and the past 33 years. I humbly ask you for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, these are our 2 candidates for district attorney. All right, we're going to do a real quick transition. The second position that we're going to be discussing tonight are the 2 candidates for county clerk, and if they could report up here. This is going to be a quick turnaround. We're just going to ask a few questions just so that the voters can get a quick taste. And so you guys can get up here. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the 2 candidates for county clerk, and beginning at stage right is Rene Perez and Arturo Guajardo Jr. Let's see here; those are our 2 candidates. I will begin by asking the public question, which is the same question to each candidate in ballot order, and you both have will each have 1 minute to respond. Following that, we'll each get a question from the panel. And do we have to know whose ballot first? Okay, Mr. Guajardo. Okay, so the question is the same question that we've been posing as the public question. It is: what skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired and public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today, and thank you also Futuro RGV for hosting this forum. My name is Arturo Guajardo Jr., and I am currently your county clerk, and I have been blessed and had the opportunity to have been elected to this post on 3 different occasions by you. I am currently seeking my 4th term in office, and I'll begin with my education as far as qualifications. I attended the University of Texas in Austin and the University of Texas Pan American. I've got a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public administration. And I spent the last 19 years of my life transforming a very antiquated paper-based facility into a today very modern, fully digital library of your records. I've been passionate about the work that I've been doing. I've also represented the southern 57 counties as their representative at the state level as the Region 8 chairman for them. So I've got a vast amount of experience in the office. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Guajardo. Same question to Mr. Perez. What skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired and public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rene Perez, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Futuro RGV, for hosting this event. I am running for this office. I've worked at this office before. I've worked there for close to I left in 2013. I started back in 2005, and I was also the administrative assistant at the office. As you all know, a lot of the times the assistant's the one that always does all the work, right? I worked at the office for a numerous amount of years. I worked day and day with the employees and with the staff of that office. And now I work as a police officer with the City of Hidalgo, and I'm also the executive administrator at the City of Hidalgo Police Department. And I work day to day with the community, and that's what I plan to do at the county clerk's office.
Thank you. Okay, we will now do a round with our panelists. And so actually we'll do 4, so everybody will get 2 questions. There'll be 2 questions to each candidate. Let's go ahead and start with Dave, and we will address the question to the incumbent, Mr. Guajardo.
Mr. Guajardo, Mr. Perez has suggested that the county clerk's office should open, I guess, at least 2 new substations in addition to the one in McAllen on the east and west sides of the county. What do you make of that proposal?
Well, when we fully digitized all of our land records, this was over 900 million pages, we had a substation in the west and one in the east. I had them open for about 2 years. Once we went fully digital, I had 0 traffic at those offices. I could not justify having them open anymore. So I brought them back to the office. I've also seen a lot less foot traffic at the county clerk's office itself, there at the courthouse. I am proud of the fact that we have been able to bring the service to the people via the internet. We now provide 24/7 access to all of our land records, and we were the first in the state of Texas, by the way, to accomplish that feat, something we are very, very proud of.
Davis, question to Mr. Perez.
Why are you running against your old boss?
Against my old boss and against my brother's current boss. See, also those of you that don't know. I work with the employees there day to day. Honestly, when I announced, a lot of the employees, they still reach out to me. I'll leave them anonymous because for backlash purposes, you all know. I considered running 10 years ago. I thought about running since when I first started. And a lot of times the elected officials get complacent after so many years. And that's what I feel that I saw when I was there at the county clerk's office. And it's not something that I thought of just running 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's something that I dreamed of since 10 years ago, and I've been planning it ever since. Thank you.
Mr. Perez. Second question, Monica, for Mr. Guajardo.
For many people, can you tell us exactly what does a county clerk do?
Sure. We are the official record keepers for the county. What does that mean? All of the records dealing with the people of this county, beginning with their birth records. We track them all the way through death. We also keep their death records. We are the caretakers of all the official records, which we average about maybe 800 to 900 of those documents being recorded daily. These are your deeds, your land records, and what have you. We also service the county courts at law, so all of the criminal and civil matters that are being filed through the court system come to our office. We also service the probate court, so everything coming through the probate system, we house the wills and airships and all those documents as well. Cattle brands are registered in our office. Beer, wine, liquor licenses come through us. New businesses, their names are registered in our office. New subdivisions are also registered in our office. So it's quite a responsibility. We are the largest office at the courthouse, by the way. We're tipping at about 83 employees at this time.
Thank you. Dave, question for Mr. Perez.
Mr. Perez, is there any category of records that you think should be put online that is not currently?
As far as that office has digitized the records, and yes, it has come a long way. One of the things as far as records that you can digitize or put online, there's marriage licenses that you can offer doing them online. That's one of the things that other states do, where you can get your marriage license online, and that's one of the things that you could do with the county clerk's office that currently doesn't offer.
If that's the case, why do you need more substations?
The substations, like my opponent said, he opened the offices and he tried opening, but that office, and as he said right now, that office is more than just records. That office offers birth certificates, cattle branding, DD-214s, marriage licenses, civil documents. They do court documents, people go and pay court collection fees. When he opened the substations, those substations only offered 1/4 of what that office entails. Those substations did not fully offer what the county clerk's offers at the courthouse.
Okay, thank you. Now we will do a brief 1-minute summary of each candidate, and I apologize for the brevity of this, but go ahead. We'll start this time with Ms. Perez.
Go ahead.
1-minute summation
I know 10 minutes isn't a lot for you all to be up here and for us to debate. As you all know, I am running for county clerk. I don't come from a political family. I don't have a political family that's been in office for over 30 years. I'm a simple public servant, and I am a police officer as well, and I'm asking for everyone's support, and hopefully in March 6th, I'll get everyone's vote.
Thank you, Mr. Pettis. Mr. Wilder.
Thank you. And thank you again for this forum tonight. You know, as the old adage goes, the proof is in the pudding. I'd ask you, I can talk all day about all the things that we've done. And there are many, many firsts in the state of Texas. As I mentioned, first to digitize our records, first to bring e-filing in the land records, first to bring e-filing in the civil side, first to bring e-filing in the criminal side. These are first things happening in the state of Texas. We're really proud of that. Hidalgo County has become a model office. Our office is a model office for the entire state today. And it's something that I'm very, very proud of. Do you want to jeopardize going in a different direction? I don't think that this is the right time to do it. We've got a couple of more ideas that we're thinking about doing. We want to get to real-time indexing, and we'd like to expand on the fact that we've got the system that we have today is the only cloud backed up system in the whole nation. Today there are people from all over the place coming to Hidalgo County to see what we are doing in Hidalgo County, and I'm proud of that. And I will continue to do and work that way for you if you will give me an opportunity and renew my contract for another 4 years. Thank you very much.
All right, let's hear it for Okay, we are now going to switch it up. All right, now we're gonna go into District 41, State Representative. All right, everybody do a little one of these, one of these. Okay. The county clerk section was pretty quick, and this one will actually be a little longer so we can get a little bit more in depth. I will go ahead and begin by introducing both candidates for District 41. We'll begin with incumbent Bobby Guerra and his challenger, Michael L. Pinker. All right. Okay, gentlemen, well, what we'll do is what we've been doing, which is just putting out the public question to each candidate in ballot order, and you can help me with that in a second. Ballot order, do we have any idea? All right, Mr. Guerra. Question. What skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired in public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Well, first of all, I've been in the House of Representatives for 5 years, and I want to continue to go back and finish unfinished business in Austin. I believe that not only my experience in the House of Representatives has been very, very helpful, but also the committees I've served on. I'm also one of the more senior members now. In the House of Representatives, seniority is extremely important if you want to get on important committees, and that takes time. And I'd like to go into my fourth session, and I'm sitting on some very important committees, public health and energy, and I've sat on other committees as well in the past, such as transportation. And so I think it's important, seniority is important, and I ask for your vote. And again, thank you for this great moment.
Thank you. All right. Same question to challenger, Mr. Pinker. What skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired and public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Futuro RGV, the sponsors, my family, and all of you for being here today to listen to us. As far as experience goes, I have to be honest right out the gate, I've never been a politician. I've never held public office, but I have been a public servant for over 20 years. I have over 10 years of EMS experience. I have over 10 years of working with the boys clubs and the community centers in this local area. I've worked for the juvenile correction systems for over 3 years, and I'm currently an educator and a coach for the McAllen School District. And I continue to push for the children of this area, the women of this area. I feel like their rights have been violated. I feel like the children in the at-risk communities are not being paid attention to, and I think it's time for new blood and a new vision to lead this area forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pinker. Okay, so what we will do now is, how many rounds here? Excuse me for 1 second. I guess we'll do 2 rounds, beginning with our moderators, and this time we'll start with Davis. And Davis, if you could address the first question to Mr. Pinker.
Mr. Pinker, you just got through saying, in part, children's rights are being violated. Could you explain that, please?
Well, I'm sorry if I was a little excessive with that, but what I'm trying to say is that as a teacher working in an at-risk community or an economically disadvantaged community, we notice that those areas get less attention than those areas where the economy is better off. The children in those districts are constantly hungry. Their materials are outdated. Their programs aren't sufficient according to what the other schools are getting. When teachers leave, classes have to be reshuffled. New teachers aren't coming in. They're pegging the campuses, which means that if a school doesn't do well on a certain state test, then those people are allowed to leave that school and go to another school, lowering the numbers in that school district, and then they hurt that school for having low numbers, and then those people in that community have nowhere local to go for their children to go to school at. That's more or less what I was trying to say.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
There's reports that the federal government says that the Texas Education Agency has, over the years, held down the population of special needs children, I think it's 8.5, regardless of how many special needs children there are. Do you have anything to say about that? Do you see that? Have you seen that? What would you do to change that if you were legislator?
I believe we need to look into more alternative education systems. I think we need to add more money to our school funding, maybe push it back to the 2008 budget. I think we need to have more money put into the special ed program. I think that all children in every classroom isn't as productive as it sounds. And I believe that children with special needs need more personal attention, and funding needs to be put towards such.
Okay. Next question would be from Monica to Mr. Guerra.
Perception, unfortunately, is reality. And when you're working in Austin as a minority part of individuals trying to explain what our border region really looks like, how can you effectively tell your counterparts and convince them that our area is a safe area, we are not in a war zone, and actually get the word across in Austin?
That's an excellent question, and in the committees I've served on, for instance, I got the Agricultural Committee to come down here, and the members of that committee were absolutely amazed. And I told them, I said, yeah, we have paved streets, guys. And they saw this thriving area. They also saw we didn't have gunfights going on in our streets. So it's important that when we serve in Austin as a representative, we bring as many members down to the Rio Grande Valley as we can, try to have hearings here, and if nothing else, just bring them here as a guest so they can see what a beautiful place this is and what a vibrant community we have and why we are leading Texas forward.
All right. Dave, go ahead and ask a question, Mr. Pinker.
Mr. Pinker, according to your most recent campaign finance report, you haven't raised any money, and the only money that you have spent is on your filing fee. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with your campaign?
I do not believe in requesting a large amount of funds from the public. I would like for the public to use their funds where they see fit. I believe that candidates should be promoting themselves, and I think that if your cause is big enough, then you should find the means to promote that yourself. So my donations, I ask for $100 or less, and we're barely getting started. So I anticipate more, involvement, but I would like volunteer involvement. I would like word of mouth. I'm not asking for dollar signs. I'm a faith-based candidate, and I believe that this is the path that we're supposed to be on. And I believe that I'm here to help this community and to help the children of this community like I have been for the past 20 years. And since God put me here, then I believe that God is going to put me in that seat as well. So dollar signs are not required right now.
All right, Davis, question to Mr. Guerra.
Back to the Texas Education Agency and the, I guess the U.S. Department of Education is saying TEA has illegally held down suppressed the number of special needs children, which I guess is because it has funding implications. What do you know about this? What will you do if you return to Austin about this?
Well, quite frankly, Davis, I consider that information to be extremely disturbing. The state of Texas has got to get its act together as far as these kids are concerned. And we've addressed some of those issues with foster care children, but we have a long way to go. But the problem is there's people in Austin, you talked about funding these issues, the problem is there are people in Austin that don't want to spend a dime on anything. And I get that. We want to keep our taxes low, but at the same time we have priorities like our public schools. My word, we're busing kids around in $1984 in the state of Texas. This is ridiculous, especially when you have rainy day funds to help us out with many issues like this.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra. Next question.
Mr. Pinker. Yes, $800 million has been given to the Department of the Department of Public Safety, and the state of Texas renewed the $800 million. What is your opinion, and if elected, what would you do if you were elected in Austin to try to change that course?
First of all, I believe that part of the education system should fall under that bracket. I believe that teachers are basically state employees but aren't treated as such. And if teachers were shifted to be under that same guideline, the public safety guideline, then they would get the same retirement system. They could get at a higher pay rate, and that would free up local money to do things for the local community. I think that shift, if they brought us into that, our teachers into that category, then the money would be used in wiser means. Now, as far as the putting money towards that, I would fight that. I believe that more money should be put towards public education, and I believe it should be put more towards women healthcare facilities.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Yes,
The reason for the $800 million is because Austin believes we're not safe down here, and they believe that the Department of Public Safety needs to come down and do the job of what the federal government, what they consider isn't doing. So besides going into education, what is your opinion in dealing with security?
Well, like you said, security is a national issue, so I would fight them. I would fight the notion of bringing more public safety officials down here. I think our money can be used in a wiser spectrum. But I do understand that from a national point of view, the way that the violence on the border looks. However, working EMS and working this entire border region, I think that I would be able to convince people in Austin that the money can be used in a wider way. I have a frontline view of what's been going on down here because of that.
Thank you. All right, Dave, and this will be the last question of the panel questions, and this question will be to Mr. Guerra.
Mr. Guerra, in 2014, Hidalgo County voters rejected the Hidalgo County Hospital District, and you and some other lawmakers went back to Austin, put in some protections, lowered the maximum tax rate, and changed the name to the Hidalgo County Healthcare District. Voters rejected it by an even bigger margin. It only takes 50 signatures from registered voters to put that issue back on the ballot. Should you and other lawmakers in Austin consider raising that number to make it a little bit more difficult to put this back in front of voters?
As far as I'm concerned, the healthcare district is off the table. It's been brought to these voters here in Hidalgo County on 2 different occasions. So that's off the table. But we need to find other innovative ways to make sure that we take care of the indigent population as far as healthcare needs are concerned. When you see children who are not being taken care of, that's a real problem. And we in the state of Texas have got to do something about that. But the healthcare district, as far as I'm concerned, is off the table. We need to find other innovative ways. I'm also pleased to announce that the local mental health authority, who I've been working very closely with, has just received some additional funding for additional beds and also some counselors. We worked very, very hard to make sure that happened, and we've got to take care of these type of issues.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Just a quick follow-up. So if the healthcare district is off the table, but it only takes 50 votes to put it back on the ballot, do you think the legislature should raise the number of votes required to bring this issue back up again?
Well, as I understand it, that's in the Texas Constitution for any healthcare districts throughout the state. And if to put it back on the ballot with just 50 signatures, you know, quite frankly, I think you're talking to the wrong person, because I would not be the one that would be making the decision to change that. But yeah, I think so. But quite frankly, again, it's off the table. It's off the table. I think that the healthcare district, the taxing district is off the table. Again, we need to find other innovative ways and make sure that we provide for the healthcare needs here in the Rio Grande Valley.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that concludes our panelist questions. We will now give each candidate a 1 minute to summarize their positions and make the appeal to the public. So we will start with the challenger, Mr. Pinker.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you again for having me. I would like to stress that I'm here to fight for, like I said, the children of our eco-disadvantaged communities. I feel like they've been forgotten. I also like to push for some sort of laws to be passed in regards to prescription writing. I feel like doctors get kickbacks for the prescriptions they write, and in turn, those prescriptions are hurting people on a large scale. I also believe that the women's health care facilities were closed and altered without proper cause, and I believe that we need to retract that. So I'm asking for your support, I'm asking for your vote, and I'm letting you know that I have been a public servant, like I said, for over 20 years. I'm honest, and I'm here for you, and I really would appreciate your vote this March. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinker. Mr. Garrett.
Well, again, I think it's important that I go back to Austin and fight for you. I've been there for 5 years. I want to go back and continue to do so. I've gained a lot of seniority, and that's important in the House of Representatives because that determines on what committees you'll be placed on, chairmanships and vice chairs positions. And so I think in order to fight for you, it's important that we have seniority in Austin, and that's what I want to do, is go back and fight for the Rio Grande Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for both of our candidates. So thank you everybody for being patient and sticking with us here tonight. Yes. Okay, so the last section of the night is going to be our race for Hidalgo County Judge. And I will go ahead and begin. 1 second. Introduce the two candidates. Beginning on stage right is candidate Richard Cortez, and our other candidate is candidate Eloy Pulido. Let's see here. Each candidate is invited to give a 1 minute statement based on ballot order. Can you help me out here? Who's on the ballot first? Mr. Pulido.
Yes. Thank you, Sam. First of all, I want to thank Futuro RGV for holding this forum. I'm proud to say that I served as Javier County Judge back from 1999 to 03. You talk about what was it that we accomplished. And to be quite frank, there was so many needs back then that I think we did a tremendous job that would take a lot of time for me to describe. But we have some leaflets here that will describe what would exactly happen in the first year, 1999, and the year 2000. These are available we talked about building a county jail. We talked about building a juvenile detention facility, bringing a retirement home for veterans, a cemetery for veterans and their wives as well. There's a lot of needs at the county level, and those needs continue to this day. And I ask for your vote and your support so we can come back and finish the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pulido. Mr. Cortez.
I also want to thank Futuro McAllen, all of you for being here. I'm running for the same reason you're here. This is our home. We want to make it better. We want our future to be better. Well, I'm Rich Cortez. I'm asking for your support to be your next county judge. As a former mayor and professional CPA, I believe that I have the leadership experience, the financial expertise, and a strong commitment to really make our community better and help our county be a leader in the state. Because we're really in very dangerous times, which I'll discuss a little more detail later. As your county judge, I will focus on efficiently and effectively providing the highest quality government services by improving drainage, roads, infrastructure, and promoting economic opportunities so that we can live, work, and raise our families in the best environment possible and at the lowest cost to the taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Okay, so as we've done with the other candidates, I will go ahead and ask the public question, and you'll each have 1 minute to reply to it. Mr. Pulido, it's kind of obvious here, but what skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired in public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
Well, first of all, I think the skills that I acquired, especially when I served at the Edinburgh School Board back in 1990 to 1993, I think taught me a lot on what it is to bring consensus, to work with people, and empower people to be able to accomplish your goals. Serving as county clerk, and Mr. Guajardo, I commend you because that was an office that I held from 1995 to 1998. And it was actually something that needed a lot of work. And I was proud to have started the process where Mr. Guajardo could then take over with Mr. Salinas to improve the services to the county taxpayers. As county judge, you know, the best job I ever had. We talk about serving people. We talk about identifying needs and serving those populations that have no voice in county government. I'm a social worker by education, and social workers are born, they are not made. And that's what it takes to be able to bring and identify needs of the people of the Hidalgo County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pulido. Mr. Cortez, same question to you. What skills, attributes, experiences have you acquired in public offices have you held that make you qualified for the position you are seeking?
I'm very lucky that I have a lot of experience in government because I've served in positions of responsibility and authority and positions of trust. The first position of trust I had was PUB trustee for the McAllen Public Utility Boards. During that time, we built a huge water plant, a huge sewer plant. That requires a lot of knowledge and skills because you have to hire people to design it, build it, and finance it. That's valuable experience for a county judge. The second experience I had, it got even bigger because then I became mayor of the city of McAllen. Our budget is a very large budget. We have many businesses. We run a golf course, a library, international bridges. We have 1,800 employees, and I can go on and on and on. The next experience that I had was I'm a past chairman of the Border Trade Alliance, vice chairman of the Texas Border Coalition. These are two organizations that deal with border trade. These are very important to us. Here in this county, we have 4 cities that have international bridges. Many of the cities that we have, including McAllen, rely on Mexican shoppers to be part of our economy. The last experience, and I'm out of time, but the last experience is very important. I also sit in the board of a bank. We make loans to people, so we know what people are doing. We have a huge financial investment of $3 billion that we have to manage every year. Boy, if that's not experience, I don't know what is, and I'd really like to donate it to you because I want to work for you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. All right, so now we will go into the panelists, and we'll do 2 full rounds, and then we'll go to ask your opponent a question, and then we'll come back and we'll do 1 last round. So, where are we supposed to start here? I think we're on Monica. And let's go ahead and have you start with a question to Mr. Pulido.
Mr. Pulido, since you were county judge, what have you done since that time period? And since you've already held the position, why do you want it back again?
Well, first of all, Monica, and thank you for the question. Since I left county government, I went to my old job as a risk manager and working with the school districts. I went to work for a home health agency as an administrator and dealing with Medicare, but at the same time dealing with people's needs, either in the medical field or insurance when it comes to workers' comp as a risk manager. The reason I decided to come back is because I saw this county just go in a very negative direction. We're talking about the taxes, the appraisal district, just going up every other year, and at the same time, county government finding ways to spend the money instead of lowering the tax rate. Now, to me, Proposition 1 will never come back, but at the same time, we need to start looking at lowering the tax rate instead of finding ways to spend the money. Proposition 1, DHR, and all the people that are involved in that process not only cannot come back in any form, whether it be a medical school fund, indigent healthcare fund, whatever it may be. There's no way that our people and the residents of this county can take any more tax increases.
We don't have to answer the question. I thought the question was, what did you do after you left office? I mean, are we going to have the leeway to say anything we want?
So after you left office, you were a risk manager and
a risk manager, and I went to work as an administrator for a home health agency as well.
Are you still working there?
No, ma'am. Right now, I'm working as a consultant for a couple of companies. One that is involved in international trade at the Far International Bridge, and another one that involves with pharmaceutical and other private businesses as well.
Do any of them do any business with the county?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Next question would be from Dave to Mr. Cortez.
Mr. Cortez, last year, the Hidalgo County Commissioners Court decided to bring back Precinct 5, which covers the northeast corner of Hidalgo County. When the precinct was abolished a few years ago, the Commissioners Court reasoned that perhaps the precinct should be abolished because it served a disproportionately small number of people and had a disproportionately small workload for the constable and justice of the peace that served it. Do you believe the Commissioners Court made the right call to bring it back?
Dave, I have no opinion of that because I haven't analyzed that information, so it would be very unfair for me to second guess the work of the county judge and commissioner. I simply don't have enough information to have an opinion of that.
Any follow-up? Okay. Let's go on to Davis Rankin. Question for Mr. Pulido.
This goes to Mr. Pulido. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Hidalgo County, and how will you address it?
Well, David, actually there's a couple of challenges. One, we start looking at infrastructure, the need for additional roads, the RMA being out of control on the line of credit that is spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet for a shovel to hit the ground, we start looking at the lack of jobs, the infrastructure that will create, that hopefully will allow for enterprise zones to be created in order to bring jobs to the county. We start looking at all these thousands of kids that are graduating, getting their degrees on an annual basis, but yet we have no jobs to offer. To me, I would look forward to creating the enterprise zones and go after that enterprise infrastructure money that's at the state level, and bring some of the companies from up north to come down here and create the jobs for our students who are getting educated so that they can be gainfully employed and at least be able to pay back some of those student loans.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, you can.
When you mentioned the RMA, the Regional Ability Authority, that made me remember something that was in the newspaper recently, that the county commissioner for the Westlake area appointed his uncle, Zeke Reyna, a lawyer, to the RMA board. And this was said to be nepotism and not allowed. There was another news report saying, well, it's an unpaid position, therefore it is allowed. Should he be able to do that? Should the county commissioner be able to appoint his uncle? What do you think about that?
I don't believe so, Davis. As a matter of fact, I believe that's one of the commissioners that endorsed my opponent. So, but I think as a county, that's a county judge's call. The fact that the appointment took place and the determination was made that there was a conflict, then it's up to the county judge to put that item back on the agenda and ask for the county commissioner to rescind the action. Now, the fact that everybody remains silent, and as a matter of fact, I believe all the candidates are supporting my opponent, to me leads to the fact that people want the status quo. The commissioner's court, including the county judge, want the status quo to remain without any changes. And to me, that's unacceptable. We need someone that's going to come in and is going to create the type of change that is needed where the corruption, including the institutional corruption that's plagued the county for so many years, that it be stopped. Enough is enough. Thank you.
All right, Monica, question for Mr. Cortez.
How do you respond to the statements that Mr. Pulido just made? Are you status quo? And you refer to these times as some of the most dangerous times that we are facing. Can you elaborate on that?
I'll be happy to. You know, the definition of a fact is a known truth. So when you state a fact, then it's hard to argue with it because it's a known truth. Let me give you some facts. When Mr. Pulido took office, the tax rate was 44 cents. When he left office, it went to 59 cents 4 years later. After he has lost office and somebody else took office, it continued to be 59 cents for 14 years. On the 15 years, it went down 1 cent. Okay. So if he couldn't, if we want to have the status quo, well, I'd rather have the status quo of lowering taxes and keeping them low than increasing them. At the same time that this happened, we have a huge problem, and the danger in this county is that we have 38% of the people live in the county are poor. Poor people don't own property. If you don't own property, you don't pay taxes. So that means that the other 60-some% are the ones paying for another 38%. That's why you need good management to really be able to get efficient and effective use of the taxpayers' dollars to get the most value. That's the training that I have, and that's the experience that I have in the professions that I have, and I want to bring it to use so we can have a better county.
Now that stop sign has been up for about a minute. You continue talking. Just saying.
All right.
Can I respond to that?
There will be a chance for you guys to talk directly to each other in a second. Did we already go through the 2 rounds? Or no? Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. Dave, question for Mr. Pulido.
Mr. Pulido.
Yes.
Earlier you said you opposed the healthcare district. Hidalgo County is the largest county in Texas without one. Dallas County, Harris County, Bexar County, El Paso County, Nueces County, you can go on and on. They all have them. They collect property taxes and they provide health care services to publicly funded medical care that often benefits the poor. If we don't have a healthcare district, how do you meet that need?
Well, actually, Dave, I had created a healthcare district back in 1999 and 2000. It was a Hidalgo County and Cameron County. It was a by-district or by-county health services district. And what we did is we were using our indigent healthcare money to leverage tobacco settlement money at a rate of 2 to 1. And but actually, we created the board. Everything was working until we lost the election, and Ramon Garcia comes in and abolishes it. Now that was not going to cost us 1 penny, and as a matter of fact, it prohibited any type of taxes. Now, talking about the taxes that Mr. Cortez was referring to, the previous administration, before we took office, lowered the tax rate by 3 cents 2 years in a row in order to make us fail. We took office and we cut the budget 10%. We cut travel 50%. We cut all new hires. We did that and we kept the same tax rate, which was minus 6 cents, for 2 years. Of course we raised taxes, Richard, because we built a jail. We built a juvenile detention facility. We built 4 substations. So we had something to show. And I don't think people mind paying their taxes as long as you have something to show. Now the fact that the appraisal district keeps raising our taxes is the reason why my last year I was in office, my budget was $67.8 million. This past year was $208 million. Now, you want to keep the status quo, Richard, you go right ahead. But I think we've had enough of tax increases and no more taxes under the administration coming back.
I guess both of us don't know what the word stop means.
So there's so much to say. That's what
Yeah,
okay. And I don't want to chop it off, but I will, I guess. No more warnings. That's it with warnings. All right. Let's see. Has that been 2? That's been 2. All right. So now to the fun part. And the stop sign's probably going to matter even less here, but let's try to make it work. People have to get home to dinner. Okay, so each candidate will be able to ask the other candidate a question, and I'm going to say 30 seconds so that you guys take 3 minutes, but okay. Mr. Cortez, if you have a question for Mr. Pulido, you can respond, and then we'll flip it. So go ahead.
Sure. This is a leadership position, and you have to work with 4 other commissioners. And right now, a lot of the things that you criticized that the prior administration has are basically going to be the same commissioners that are going to be serving with you should you take this position. How do you feel that you're going to reconcile the differences between what you believe to be right and what they believe to be right?
Well, and that's a very good question, Richard, because when you start talking about status quo, and I can understand the commissioners liking the way things are, because nobody questions them. You know, they basically do as they please, because the budget keeps going up anyway. And I can understand that. Now, what I think with my leadership skills, I can bring consensus and I can show them this is the way things are done and this is what can happen for the public. Because it's the taxpayer that we need to work for, not for ourselves. And I know some of the commissioners don't show up for work, but yet they collect their checks, and that's fine. I think under my administration, and again, it's up to the public to decide who serves and who doesn't. But at the same time, I need to show them, and I know that I will, and I know I can win them over to show that my leadership skills will get things accomplished, and at the same time be able to lower the tax rate for our citizens. Now, and I understand there's a lot of deals that have been cut, which is why, you know, Zeke Reina gets appointed to that RMA board, and actually they were the first ones that came out to endorse you. And I understand that all the other commissioners come out and endorse you because you basically want to serve as Ramon Garcia did, where, you know, he practices, I don't know whether you're going to keep your CPA business or not, but the position of county judge is 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day, every day. It's not a low energy job, it's a high energy job and constant. And I'm willing to do that again because that's what the taxpayers deserve.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now Mr. Pulido, the question from you to Mr. Cortez, and Mr. Cortez, you'll have an opportunity to respond.
Mr. Cortez, lately you made a statement that you have never supported Prop 1. But yet, everybody that surrounds you, everybody that has endorsed you, supported Prop 1. Your entire campaign staff was on payroll for Prop 1. But yet you want to tell the people that you never supported Prop 1. When you have contracts with Mr. Alonso Cantú, but yet you seem to want to, you know, pull the wool over the people's eyes and say, you know, I'm against new taxes, I'm against funding the medical school with taxes, the day before you announced, you voted, you were the third vote, to give the $1.5 million of the taxpayers.
Is there a question?
The question was how can he tell the public that he's against Prop 1 when everybody that he surrounds himself with, everybody who has endorsed him, endorsed Prop 1?
So that's the question.
That's the question.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I just have to feed more information so he could understand the question.
Sure. You know, and that's a very legitimate question because this is a very emotional issue for all of us. It is very evident that 82% of the people that voted against it. So it's real popular to say, golly, I'm for 82%. If you're running for election, you want to be on the 82%. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do that. But, you know, I'm a 74-year-old person, and I worked all my life. And I've worked all my life with people. And I don't think I've ever been called a liar, okay? And when I tell you that I wasn't for Proposition 1, I told you why I wasn't for Proposition 1. It was a poorly written document. It had a lot of ambiguity. It gave too much power for somebody to tax you, and I thought it was wrong. I'm proud of the fact that all of these people have supported me because this is a position of trust. Every organization I've been, my parish council, I've been parish council president. My CPA organization, I've been president of the CPA organization. Border Trade Alliance, I've been president of that. Every organization I've been, they wanted me to be president. You know what? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm not proud of that because they like the judgment that I have. I'm down to the last years of my life. I lost my wife. If she were alive, I wouldn't be here. But you know what my son-in-law told me one day when I thanked him for taking care of my wife? He's a doctor. I said, thank you so much for taking care of Mama, Doc. And he looked at me and says, Grandpa, what good is it to have knowledge and skills if you don't use it to help others? Well, that's why I'm here. And he's right. It's not up to me or him to decide. It's up to you.
Okay. All right, guys. We're almost in the home stretch here, so I know everybody's moving. We're going to do one more round of... Andrew, one more round? 2 more rounds? Probably one. Everybody want one more round? 5 more rounds? One more round. All right. Do one more round of questions from the panelists, and so that'll be 4. So it'll be... Anyways, where did we end up last time? Dave. So that's Davis.
I'll do.
Davis.
I got one right here.
All right. Who are you going to ask it to?
Who's Mr. Cortez? What do you see as Hidalgo County's relationship with and kinds of support for the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, including the new medical school?
Well, I hope we can all work together, to support the UTRGV program. As an economist, as an accountant, somebody that follows economic trends for a living, I can tell you this was God sent. And we have to work together to make it work. The creation of jobs, the creation of wealth that medical school has is going to be incredible for us. Our jobs are in 3 areas. We have people that work for the government, we have people that work in retail, and people that work in healthcare. Government right now is running out of money, and retail is changing tremendously. The jobs of tomorrow are not going to be the jobs of today. The problems of tomorrow are going to be difficult to solve. I'm not going to have all the answers to those problems. That's why we need to work together. I'd rather find reasons to work together than reasons not to work together. I'm not going to criticize my fellow people that are in government right now. We need to work together if we're going to solve these problems.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Pulido, some of the conversations, at least that happen in Edinburgh, deal with the courthouse. What is your position on the courthouse? How would we pay for the courthouse if we're lowering the taxes across the board?
Well, Monica, that goes back to what we were talking about. The status quo wants for what they say to go. Talk about 5 people deciding how to spend $150 million of your dollars. And to me, that's unacceptable. To me, I think that the people need to decide. We need that project to be put on referendum, where you can decide how they're going to spend your money, where they're going to spend your money, but more importantly, that we get a process in place. Because I know Mr. Cortez already said, you know, I welcome whatever Ramon Garcia says. That's what's going to happen. I believe that we need to build a justice center by the expressway, and the courthouse that we have is usable. It might need a little work. However, we cannot tear down or build a new courthouse in front of the old courthouse. It makes no sense. It's like building a new house in front of your old house and try to be proud and live at the same place.
Thank you.
Same.
I have a follow-up to that.
Oh, all right.
After serving on the sales tax board for the city of McAllen that actually has decided some of those millions of dollars, one thing I learned, it's not the building, it's the maintenance of those properties that cost so much money. So I'm back to the question of how would we build 2 of these buildings of what you're projecting, and how would we maintain them if you're lowering taxes?
Well, the way you do it, Monica, is first of all, you downsize, because you're not building a whole new courthouse. You're building courts. So instead of spending $150 million, we could probably get away with spending $60 million. The way to determine the price, you know, and this is what I told Ramon and some of the commissioners, the last thing that is determined is the price. You have to go through the process, you have to go through the square footage, and then you negotiate with the contractor, and then you arrive at a price. They've done it all wrong. They came in and said, build us a $150 million courthouse. You know what, I'll build it for you. It came out, it's coming out to $446 a square foot. It's ridiculous. Now, what I'm talking about, everybody that goes to jury duty, what's the biggest problem they have? Parking. They want to build a courthouse on the only parking lot they have. How does that make any sense at all? To me, it doesn't.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Dave, to Mr. Cortez.
Mr. Cortez, about 10 years ago when the federal government wanted to build a border wall between the United States and Mexico, the county reached sort of a compromise to cooperate with the government and build what became the levee fence. If you were elected judge and the government came to you and asked to work something out where the county would support building that, would you be open to compromise, or would you rule it out on principle?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, I hate to answer a question on a hypothetical that still lacks information. I don't know if the compromise would be extremely beneficial to the county. If it were extremely beneficial to the county, then I would have to compromise, because every decision that you make is, you know, what's for the greater good. I happen to believe, being a past chairman of the Border Trade Alliance, that a physical wall is not going to stop crime, it's not going to stop immigrants from coming or whatever, it's just going to slow them down. And that's a very expensive way to do that. That's why it takes leadership. I'm going to be the leader of 1 million people. And I've been to Washington, I've been to Austin, I know how to speak to those people. Sometimes they won't listen. But with the help of the people, and we can get more people to vote in Hidalgo County. I mean, we have voter apathy right now. We need more people to go out and vote. So when we go talk to those people, then our voice can be heard. So that requires leadership in a position of trust, and that's what I offer the people of Hidalgo County.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. And this is going to be the last question before the final statements, and that'll be from Davis to Mr. Pugh.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Richard Cortez. There was a editorial in the Monitor the other day about out-of-control county budgets, that they've set a budget, and that includes pay. At the beginning of the year, people troop through the Commissioner's Court and get pay raises. And they can't seem to, they don't have or have not stuck to any sort of a schedule of pay and pay raises. Everything is ad hoc. What's your view of that?
I think it's ridiculous. And for anybody to allow that to happen is unacceptable. When I was in office, we created a step and grade system that was implemented for about a year, and then again we left office and it was abolished. You have people at the Sheriff's Department, some sergeants that are making the same, that 5-6 year sergeant earns the same as a first year sergeant. Now that happens all over the place. You have people with high school diplomas coming in earning $60,000, $70,000 a year. Now this is part of the reason why the commissioners that are there now are endorsing my opponent, is because he's the status quo and will allow him to do as they please. I'm totally against that. That's why I'm looking to cut the budget 10%, and that's another reason why they don't like it, is because I'm gonna ask them to put some of that money back and cut their wasteful spending ways, because it's your money. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we are almost at the home stretch here. The last part here will be for each candidate. We'll have 1 minute, and let's make it a hard minute, to summarize your position and sort of let us know what you want us to know. And we'll go ahead and we'll start with Mr. Cortez and then go to Mr. Pulido. So, Mr. Cortez.
This job is not easy. And coming to a consensus when there's many differences of opinion isn't an easy process. And that's why it requires working together. Since I'm a technician, I like to make decisions based on the objective evidence as opposed to subjective evidence. I've heard a lot of subjective belief, but I haven't seen any evidence. I don't want to overspend your money either. But I think it requires a person that knows the difference when you're looking at something, what it means. Okay? I've already told you that this county here is one of the largest counties, but yet is the poorest counties. That's why you have to charge a higher tax rate for the property values, because there's a disproportionate share of that. If you go to other counties, different. Well, what's going to happen in the future is we keep growing. We grew 20%. That's going to take management and skills to do that. So I don't want to start my job by criticizing people. I want to start my job by saying, let's hold hands, let's work together, let's solve the problem, let's bring in the right people together to help us solve the problems. That's what I want to do, and I'm proud that these people are supporting me.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pulido?
Well, for somebody who's never done the job, it's very difficult for you to determine when you said it's not an easy job. It's not easy, you're right. It's tough. But I've done it. I've got the experience. I can hit the ground running, and I know exactly where the waste comes in. Now, yeah, they're supporting my opponent, but they're supporting him for the wrong reasons. And I believe that it's up to you to decide whether this county keeps going in the same direction or whether we change directions. When my budget was $67.8 million, and now it's taking $208 million to do the exact same thing that I was doing, there's something wrong. And that's something that we cannot allow to continue. As your county judge, I will guarantee you that I'll call a spade a spade. And I will change the direction, because the commissioners, they get pressure from you all, just like everybody else does. And I know that once we expose all the waste that is taking place, they will change their minds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, everybody, let's hear it for both of our candidates. Okay, a couple of last housekeeping things before everybody goes home for dinner. Thank the sponsors. Okay, Rhodes Enterprises, IBC Bank, Frost Bank, Rio Bank, Ernie Williams, Val Eason, Ex Alvarado, Dr. Vanessa Chang, CodeRGV, Rio Grande Guardian, Upper Valley Mail Services, and Copy Zone. Thank you to those sponsors. Also,
February 6th meeting.
Well,
if you were interested in this, we're going to do it again on February the 6th at the Edinburgh Municipal Auditorium, same time, 6 o'clock. We will have County Commission for Precinct 4, most all of the judges, and the county treasurer.
Right.
So come out and hear them, and thank you, Sam, thank you, the panel, and thank you, audience, for coming and hearing our panels.
Bye, everybody.
Jane, have a good night,
You did a good job, but at least they can't blame me about like. Did you say no? That's Excuse me. Step in and this you want it bad enough that you're willing to do other No, but that's like it's a. I was getting ready to write it. Excuse me. That's why I'm really into it. Do you? I don't know. But I do. Yeah, he does.
A lot.
Brandon?
Please don't mind. Everyone does.
It's like, pick up all the chairs.
This is the year. It's got to be done.
That's like serious.